Minecraft has had some pretty controversial updates. 1.9's changes to combat, 1.19's chat reporting, and even Beta 1.8's addition of sprinting and hunger. Some people have labeled each one of these updates and others as the worst in Minecraft's history. And although they did harm the game to some degree, there is one that in my opinion harmed the game far more than any other, and that is the 1.14 Village and Pillage update. So today I ask you to hear me out as we go deep to understand why 1.14 is possibly Minecraft's worst and most harmful update. Starting in 2014, Minecraft slowed and then went down in popularity due to pretty mediocre updates and people moving on to other games. And by 2018, the game was at its lowest point in popularity in over 7 years, so Mojang had to change focus. Each update from 1.13 on would have a part of Minecraft be revamped and had a bunch more added to it according to what the community wanted. So 1.13 redid the entire oceans and added tons of new blocks, items, and mobs. And it was massively successful, with the community not dropping anymore and saw old players return. So 1.14 would follow up by revamping the villages and the villagers, which was nearly unchanged for 7 years. On top of that, they would add new blocks, items, and mobs that would make the game seem even more expansive. So with that being said, let us look at the good and then we'll get into the bad. To begin, there is some good to this update. The first thing is the actual village system. I think the idea of having each villager type have their own block so people can build their own villages actually works pretty well, though I don't think it was as well as it could have been, which I'll talk about later. I think the Wandering Trader was also a really good addition, since sometimes you have to do a challenge or have a base very far away from everything else, so being able to get those exploratory blocks and items is a very good alternative. Outside of that, the blast furnace, barrel, scaffolding, and smoker are genuinely useful additions to the game and have made the game as a whole less tedious. And lastly, I think the lanterns, bell, and all the new decoration blocks are really good and look nice. And that is really all I have to say about the good in this update. To start with the bad, one of the biggest things added in this update is the raid system, which works by a player getting bad luck from a pillager. Then if they go to a village, a group of pillagers will spawn in and raid the village till the player kills them all or the villagers die. And this system just kind of sucks. The first problem is the pillagers themselves, which like the Phantom, are unavoidable when just playing the game how you want. You can sleep at night and torch up your base, but if you wander around collecting wood or getting food, they will eventually spawn in and you are punished for killing them. And I see this as being punished since when you kill them, they give you bad luck, which lasts for an entire real-life hour. This forces the player to either stay away from villages, which what if their base is a village, or they can accidentally or legitimately have to go into a village, which results in them and or their villagers being easily killed if they do not have good tools. It really just feels like they could not figure out a better way to make players encounter this, so they kind of just force it upon the player. And the raids themselves are also kind of meh. They don't really feel that good. It's just running around to kill the pillagers, with the only cool one being the Ravager. It feels like they could have done something better, maybe some type of effect that changes the sky color or something. I don't know, just something better than this. It just feels very bland and kind of just samey. But the real problems come with just how game breaking this update was. In terms of the villagers themselves, they can now trade mending, which allows the player to repair their tools and armor with XP, and is in my opinion the most overpowered single thing in the game. And with the new trading system, you can now force a mending villager in the span of a minute, so you can just get endless mending books if you want. But it's not just that. During raids, the pillagers drop emeralds in the Totem of Undying, which is the second most overpowered thing in the game. And this led to people making raid farms, which just completely removes the challenge of Minecraft entirely. Okay, that is stuff that you do after playing a world for a few hours. But the real problem is that the villages themselves are overpowered. Each house has a bed in it, which has pretty much killed the entire survive the night aspect of Minecraft, and each house has a chest with either food, tools, or obsidian and flint. And this just completely removes the entire challenge of the first days and just kind of puts the player on an automatic path to getting to the nether and then the end. Minecraft, in my view, and I say this is my view, is half an exploration survival game and half build whatever you want game. And this just kind of ruins both, since you don't need to go out to find food, tools, and obsidian, and you don't really need to build a house since this village pretty much has all the beds and the special use blocks you need. And by far the worst thing in this update is the hay bales, which doesn't really seem like a big issue, but it really is because they make the hunger system entirely useless. You can find anywhere from 20 to 2 stacks of these in a single village, and if you just turn 1 stack into bread, you can get over 3 stacks of food. Just in the first 10 minutes of the game, you can get enough food to get you to getting fully enchanted tools, where then you could just make farms, which turns the entire hunger system and the challenges of Minecraft into a minor annoyance. Overall, these things just kind of ruined the beginning of the game for me, and you could say that you could just avoid villages then. But that was the entire purpose of this update, and if you have to avoid something that naturally spawns everywhere in a game mode about survival surviving in a randomly generated world, then you were kind of intended to accept and use all of this. I really think Mojang screwed themselves with this update, since in future ones they would have to make mobs have more health, such as the Warden and Brood, and they had to add an entire new tier of armor and tools. Like I said, I think it really ruined the balance of the game, and it's something that I think Minecraft really hasn't fixed since and may never be able to truly go back on. So now that I established how this update did have some good and also just completely broke the game, let me get into some of the missed opportunities this update had. This update was the first one to introduce the biome vote, which saw the Minecraft community vote on what biome should be revamped and added onto. The community chose the taiga, which had 0 updates since its creation in 2011, and Mojang did really nothing with it. They added only 2 things. The first one was the berry bush, which is kind of meh and could fit in any forest biome with a color change. And the second one was the foxes, which is a cool animal, but really feels lacking since you can't have it as a pet like you can in real life. And I really think Mojang could have added so much more to it. Maybe a caribou and bear mob, or maybe even the return of gravel beaches from beta. Also added in this update was the panda, bamboo, suspicious stews, and dyes, which all kind of just feel empty. They aren't bad, but they kind of just feel like they needed more uses, which is probably why Mojang has added bamboo slabs and stairs to the newest update. But really the biggest missed opportunity in my opinion was that the village system and the villages themselves were half-baked. To start with the villages, they got a completely new look, but I really feel like they could have done more in terms of making them look bigger and stand out. Mojang scrapped the jungle and swamp villages, which is a shame since I think they were the only ones that could have fully worked with the other villages' style. On the other hand, the village system added is good for those who want to have their own functioning village, but doesn't really change the core of how villagers work. People can still enslave them, and now it's just easier to get whatever you want from them, which really doesn't change anything. I would really like to see some challenges with villagers instead of it being made easier. Maybe they need to have some actual space, or you have to upgrade their stations over time so they can get more trades. With that all being said, let us get into the last thing this update added, which was the changes to the textures. 1.14 changed nearly all of the textures in Minecraft, and recently there has been numerous videos and discussions if these changes were good or bad, and I honestly think they were not that bad. I personally like the old textures better because that's what I grew up with, but the new textures are fine too. The only real complaint I have is that some of the textures feel waxy and kind of samey. Like cobblestone, for example, doesn't really stand out as much as it did before, and it doesn't really look as sharp as it did with the older textures. Luckily, Mojang lets us choose between the old and new. If they didn't, I would have a problem with it, but that's really all I have to say about that. Overall, 1.14 was an update that its goal was to expand and revamp one of Minecraft's biggest survival aspects, while also adding tons of new mobs, blocks, and items. And to some extent it did properly, but the problems really came when Mojang made everything way too overpowered. From beds in every village house to creating a way for people to easily farm the most overpowered items in the game. And the results of this have made Minecraft go farther and farther away from its simple survival roots and into the realm of just acquiring the most overpowered items to quickly make the biggest builds and contraptions. And I don't really think this will make the game better in the long term. Anyways, thank you so much for watching. Hopefully this video wasn't too controversial, but if you did enjoy watching and if you are new to the channel, like and subscribe, and if you already are, like and share. Have a good day and goodbye.